let's explore the most common type of food craving, the ones you get at night. What's up with that? What do you do about it? How do you wrap your mind around it? And how do you go beyond the obvious tips? So we're going to be covering all this in this video. If you like the video, I cover a lot on cravings. That's my thing. So please subscribe, like the channel. You know the drill. Thank you so much for your support. Let's just dive in. Night cravings. I'm talking after a day of work. I'm talking when the kids are asleep, and it doesn't really matter as much about what the craving is. It's more about the timing of the craving. I've heard people, oftentimes they crave sweets, of course, chocolate, ice cream, those are probably the most common ones. But I mean, people will crave anything at night. I mean, it's crazy. Sometimes people binge on healthy stuff, or they go back for, more and more like bread, something that's not as sweet as chocolate, but also has a lot of carbs. So what's up with these cravings at night? Like, let me cover the obvious stuff, because it is important that we cover the obvious stuff, although I do know the obvious stuff alone doesn't fully explain the cravings. I'm working with a couple people right now who they've done all these tips, like they've eaten regularly, they've had protein, they've relaxed, they've not let themselves get too hungry. Those are the obvious things. We'll cover them individually in just a tiny bit, but I do know that these obvious things, they've stayed hydrated. Even if you do all the obvious things, you still might have these overwhelming cravings that just won't go away. You're resisting it and it's annoying you, and then why not? Why not just have one, right? Just give in, just one. You've earned it, right? Or even screw it, I'm done. Or oftentimes there's a mindlessness. You turn on the TV, and boom, you're all of a sudden there's your hands in the bag, and there you are. So whether it's a rebel or a mindless or like a giving in, these cravings are there, and they're happening at night, despite the obvious things that you are probably doing already to stop the food cravings at night. So let's just cover these obvious ones real quickly, because if you aren't doing them, maybe you're missing out on one of them. Maybe you're doing 4 out of the 5 or 5 out of the 6. We'll see how many I cover. So watch out, get your basics covered, right? Because if you really want to get to the advanced stuff and kind of unpeel this stuff, you got to have a strong foundation, right? So it's very important we start off with a strong foundation. Let's cover it real quick. Basically, you don't want your blood sugar levels to get too low. Blood sugar levels too low, bad. Blood sugar levels too low, bad. Okay? When your blood sugar gets low, that's when your body's going to start getting to be hungry. And if you're stressed and thinking all day, that stress will actually block your hunger signals. So you'll be hungry the whole day, but you won't be consciously aware of it. And then what'll happen at night is you're calorie deficient and you're stressed and your blood sugar is low. So your body, your blood sugar level's low. Your body, it thinks it needs a lot of sugar. It needs a lot of food to compensate. And so, boom, it becomes a survival mechanism. The body thinks you're starving, by the way. If your blood sugar gets too low, it literally thinks it's starving. It thinks it's a life or death situation, even if cognitively you're aware that, whatever, plenty of food in the pantry or whatever. Cognitively, you might know that, but the subconscious part of you, the part of you that breathes when you're asleep, you don't consciously do that, right? The subconscious animal part of you is going to think that it's dying. And so it's going to take over and it's going to control your arms, and it's going to either make you zone out so that you go eat, or it'll get rebellious so you go eat, or it'll just make you have one bite and keep on going. So it's going to somehow win if your blood sugar is low. So how do we stop the blood sugar from getting low? In general, you don't want to get too hungry. What that means is you got to eat regularly. I'm talking breakfast, lunch, dinner. Yeah, you can do your intermittent fasting, whatever. The same principle still applies here. Don't get too hungry. Don't let your blood sugar get low, okay? We got to see the underlying principle. I don't really care when you eat per se, but the underlying principle has to be understood, right? If you get too hungry, if your blood sugar gets low, you're going to get freaking hungry. So how do we stop that? You eat regularly. Every 3, 4 hours, 5 hours. When you eat protein, you eat healthy fats. That keeps you satisfied. It helps it so that when you are going in between that 3 to 4 hour gap where you're not eating, then you are satisfied and you're not thinking about food. So protein and fat, you got to stay hydrated, right? Because that's a big one too. If you're thirsty, this could even apply at night, but if you're dehydrated throughout the day, you're going to have cravings, right? You're going to feel thirsty. It's easy to misinterpret that thirst craving for like something food. You'll feel a thirst or a craving. The Buddhists. Buddha, great guy. We'll cover some of his tips in just a little bit about the deeper workings of emotional cravings. But he said craving is like a thirst. It's an unquenchable thirst. And so we want to, first of all, set the conditions so that we don't have any physical thirst. We don't have any physical thirst. We might have emotional thirst, and we will cover that. But thirst, cravings, we don't want that. We want to take care of the nutrition stuff first. So eat regularly, don't get too hungry, have protein, have fat, stay hydrated. Okay, I think that's the basics, all right? So do all that stuff, see how it goes. It's, again, like I said in the beginning, it's not going to cover everything. It's just, it's the reason people reach out and to me is because they're struggling with food. They've tried all the obvious things. They basically know they're healthy, but they're still overeating. And they're also, at this point, they're aware that it's comfort related, or sleep related and stress related. But again, they aren't sure how to stop. So let me just cover these three bases real quick. Stress. The body is like a thermometer, right? And so if the temperature is too hot, what happens when you cooking in the oven and the temperature thing is on high all the time? Well, it blows up. Same thing. Your body, the subconscious part of you, right? Not the conscious part of you. I'm talking the subconscious, the animal, the emotional, the limbic system. That part of you, when the temperature's up really high, it's going to cool you down. It's going to force you to slow down. So how does it do it? Well, some people gamble, some people drink alcohol, and other people eat food till they go numb, till they are forced to slow down because literally their belly is uncomfortable and they have to lay down because it's so uncomfortable to move. That's your body's way of slowing you down because this thinking freaking brain is not slowing down, doesn't know how to slow down. Same thing with sleep. Sleep's going to mess everything up. If you don't get sleep, you're going to be more stressed. The body's going to need to cool you down. It's going to try to cool you down through numbing you through food, disassociating you, making you go mindless through food, and just being a food coma. All right? That is something to do with stress. So I think you probably know this by now. These are the basics of how you handle food cravings at night and understanding why they happen. One, there's this whole low blood sugar thing. You're not eating enough. You're not satisfied. That's a big part. Got to check those bases. The other part is that you're stressed throughout the day and you're not somehow managing the stress. And this is where we get into the more advanced tips, the real interesting things that are more just complicated, quite frankly. So stress, you are aware of stress, right? It's in your brain. You know what stress is. You know that your food is somehow tied in with stress. You got to journal, all right? I'll mention journaling, but when you journal, you uncover the subconscious parts of your personality, the inner critic, the binge part, the overproductive part, and you also uncover the inner child. Now, I know this is going deep into psychology here, and this video is not about the depth of this psychology, but just real briefly, when you start to journal, I'm talking a mindful food journal, then you start noticing your thought patterns. And you'll notice a battle going on between your thoughts. One side, it's almost like a part of you will say, oh, just have one bite. The other part is saying, no, don't have a bite. Just meditate or something. And you'll notice these conflicting thought patterns. And when you are pausing before you eat, when you journal, then you become aware of these thought patterns. And then you can start to see these different parts of your mind. You can start to explore your mind. You can think of your mind as like a big cave. And inside that cave, there's like a part of you, like, a relative that's inside your mind, the you, but not you also. And that part maybe overeats. And maybe there's a different part that works really hard. And maybe there's a different part that criticizes you. And right now they're all in that cave. And it's like you can't see them. So you need to shine the light inward. How do you do that? You start by journaling. You write body sensations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You get into journaling. You keep journaling, keep practicing, keep pausing and reflecting and introspecting really and trying to listen to these different dynamics and seeing how they interact. And eventually what you see is that all these pieces, from the person who's trying to work hard, from the overeater to the shame, they're all kind of, there's even a farther character in the back of the cave, all right? And these guys, they're trying to protect what I call, what's called the inner child. Now, I know we're super in the deep end here, but this inner child is like young, let's say under 15, whatever, 4 years old, 10 years old, and it's buried in your subconscious, right? And all these different parts of you, because they're in the cave, it's like they aren't in the present moment. They're in the past, all right? So they're in the past. They're living in the past. They think you're 15. They think you're 15. The productive part of you thinks you're 15, and it wants to work hard and be productive and do well in school so that mommy and daddy give you praise and validation, and so that your teachers don't make fun of you. All right? It's really young. But the overeating part, it's tired, it's overworked, it doesn't feel seen. It's trying to help you in its own way. It's a young part, very young. Inner critic, trying to motivate you or trying to protect you from shame somehow, etc. All these parts that, if you start really understanding them, they're all good. They're all trying to help you. Even the overeating part that the conscious part of you hates, they're all trying to protect this inner child. And so as you journal, you eventually form a relationship with this inner kid. You're shining the light of awareness inward. And then what happens is that all these parts, they can finally see the inner kid back there. It's like these parts had thought that there was something very bad back there. Like this inner kid that was maybe put in the back of the cave was very bad, very fearful, But now that the light is in the cave and you, yourself, your real self, your conscious self can see inside the cave, can see these people, they can look behind them and into the cave and see this your inner child. And all together, you guys can bring that inner child, welcome them into the present moment, release their traumas, release their fears, release their burdens, we'll say. And then the overeating part, the thinking part, etc. They don't need to work so hard to protect the inner kid, because they can see that the inner kid is out of the cave. The thing in the back of the cave is no longer in the back of the cave, and they're like, oh yeah, we can chill more. It's not like these parts go away. They sort of shift. They sort of transform. They don't feel like they have to do it, right? So anyways, that's kind of the big picture. You start off with nutrition. You figure out the journaling. You look inward. You figure out this inner workings of your mind. You get to the inner child. You connect with the inner child. You help all the parts see the inner child and work together. And then you bring it back. And now finally you have the real solution. So that is how you stop craving sweets at night. That's why you do it, is, for the reasons we just covered. And and so if you want to get started, I would suggest doing the basic food stuff. Get hydrated, eat regularly, protein, satisfaction, blah, blah, blah. You got that. Don't get hungry. Then start to food journal, all right? The Eating Enlightenment Food Journal app is an amazing resource on how to do that. There's a app you can download. The links are right down below, and it's based on mindfulness food journaling inspired by cognitive behavioral therapy, where you write down your bodily sensations, your emotions, etc., right before you eat. And what that does is that it brings awareness to your cues, your triggers, etc. And your triggers are really the subconscious parts that are trying to protect the inner child, all right? But you have to consciously, you can't know this up here. You have to know it in here. And so when you're journaling about these parts and you see your thought patterns, you're going to start to become aware of these different parts. You're going to see your hunger patterns. You're going to see what foods keep you full. And it's all about the discipline of bringing mindfulness to the moment before you eat. If you do this, right away, you will stop binging. It's true. Now, with journaling, you have to go deeper. If you just stop at the surface layer of learning about your cues and pausing, it's not deep enough. And so the Eating Enlightenment journal tool, it also has things where you can look at where you binge to spot your triggers. It looks at your thought patterns. It looks at it. It'll track your thought patterns. And so you can see these patterns that start to arise when you binge or overeat or emotionally eat or compulsively eat. And that will give you some insight into sort of these dynamics inside your mind. And it's a fantastic way to just build mindfulness. And let's just real quick, I want to just highlight a few things what people are saying, okay? We have people who try this technique a few times and stop binging, all right? Sometimes it just is a magical thing for people where they just try it and stop. People who access their eating patterns, they can understand the satisfaction and protein and everything from a way different perspective. We have other people who are becoming aware of their cues and their triggers. It all starts by the discipline of pausing before you eat, all right, and being mindful. And then finally, we have other people who say these great things.
I have a really mean voice in my head about food. Like anytime I don't do the most perfect whatever eating, or I do an overeating, unconscious eating, I have the voice that comes on that says, "You're a loser. You're never going to get this right. You're the pits of the world." A very harsh critic, horrible voice. And I think I'm able to recognize it and go, okay, wait a minute, and just I keep using, I pretend I'm a scientist and very objective, and I'll even have to write it down. Like the voice says, you're gonna get fired, or you're whatever it says, and then I would say, what's the truth? Because it's 99.9% a lie. So I write down the lie, and then I have to say, but what's reality?
I'm 42 years old, and I have suffered with disordered eating probably since I was 8 years old. It's been quite a struggle over the last 35 plus years. I have gone up and down in weight 3 or 4 times, 100 pounds, and gone up and down from 20 to 30 pounds numerous times. But from there, a whole cycle starts where we focused on food, binging, losing weight, gaining weight, eating to escape. And it creates a whole fantasy world where we don't deal with our real problems, which are really bothering us. And so when you work with Jared, he's going to first help you identify your urges to binge in real time. This has to do with journaling. So when you want to binge or you want to diet, whatever it is, you need to journal, because what it really means is there's some type of feeling or difficult emotion coming up for you. And the key is to learn the tools from Jared of how to talk to these feelings and emotions, how to soothe them. And that way you don't need to binge. And that's what I really learned from him. It's a lot of work of soul searching. You have to talk about memories, thoughts, feelings, and it's difficult. It's very rewarding and healing, but in the moment, it's hard work. But trust me, once you do it and you heal, it's much easier than the eating disorder and driving yourself crazy.
So be sure to check out the Eating Enlightenment app. The links are down below. Leave a question with anything else you have. Okay, peace.